Hi everyone, I'm hoping I'm looking at the right spot on the video because when I replayed my last video back I was looking in some random spot. But anyway, I'm hopefully going to be looking where I'm meant to be looking. So very random amateur kind of video production happening here, but anyway, all good, we'll move on. So today's lesson we're going to be looking at wiring techniques. Now wiring techniques are really essential to learn because they're something that you'll use the general same thing pretty much every single time. I've learned lots of different wiring techniques. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, I was trained in a professional institution at TAFE and my teacher was not a very nice teacher. She was not. We didn't like her. We were scared of her actually. And you know, I was quite young back then, you know, 22, so 21 when I first started my course, 22, and she was pretty scary. She used to throw our work across the room, okay, and if it stayed together, we might get a tick in that area, but it had to meet so many more requirements. But learning under her was quite good because she was so strict and scary that we made sure that we just did our best work always. We always made sure we turned up on time and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, I'll give you little tricks and hints along the way for all sorts of stuff regarding floristry, and just to give you a bit of perspective on my life as being a florist and the joys and the heartaches. It's a very heartbreaking kind of industry. It's not all fun and games. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about wiring techniques. Now I've just got this little thing to show you because when I used to teach it, I found that different learners learn different ways, and things like wiring techniques were just really useful to show people. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be using what they call a short hairpin. So a short hairpin is just very similar. I'll use a 22 gauge wire. Let's hold on. I can get one out. There you go. 22 gauge wire. So you can just see here, this is just a 22 gauge wire. This is a hairpin. That's a hairpin. What we classify as a hairpin. It's just one length of a wire, equal length roughly. Okay, so when we're talking about short hairpin, we're talking probably a little bit longer than that actually. Sorry, that's probably not long enough because it needs to go down enough to cover the stem, and I'll show you that in a minute. But that's what you consider a short hairpin. Sorry, get it more in line. Using my iPad now, it's a little bit different to my phone. Anyway, that's a short hairpin. Okay, and I'll show you how we're going to use that in a minute. But you can see in this picture that when the stem goes in, it only goes in about 1/3 of the way. Okay, so when we're talking about short hairpin, we need it to, this is an ivy leaf. Ivy leaves are so fantastic to use. I don't have any ivy where I am at this stage. Ivy is usually something that you can find in most gardens, and I would definitely suggest to use some ivy if you can find some in your neighbourhood, and try and grow it because you just use it all the time. It's a great little leaf to use. Always use a 26 gauge or less, or even a 28 gauge if you've got more wires to choose from, but never anything stronger than that. It'll just break your leaf. Anyway, we're doing a short hairpin here, okay, and will we use parafilming techniques today? Probably not, because parafilming is probably a different lesson in itself. So today I'm just going to show you some wiring techniques, just some simple little wiring techniques. Okay, so first of all, I've just got a whole bunch of leaves from my garden. Some of them won't be practical or useful, but I've only got what I've got, and I don't even know what half of them are called anymore because I've just been out of the industry for, I haven't worked in a florist shop for probably over 10 years now. easily 10 years. 2010. Was I even working in 2010? No, I think I'd probably stopped by then. I pretty much started my degree in 2010 and did homeschooling for 4 years. Anyway, I've just got some basic leaves from my garden, and I've got these sorts of leaves as well. I'm going to show you how to do some longer. So this is where your longer stem 22 gauge wires is what we spoke about before. Your long stem ones, try and keep them in one straight line because they're hard to work with when they start bending. But anyway, you're just using nice leaves. Going to be wiring the backs of the leaves, and this means that when you have an arrangement that you can manipulate the leaves. So rather than just sort of sitting wherever they want, the leaves can be manipulated, and you can make them however you like, okay, to do whatever you like with them. Probably be rusty. I haven't wired anything for a while, but these sorts of leaves are really beautiful in arrangements. Again, I'm not going to tell you what they're called because I just don't remember. Used to be right into it, but anyway, all good. And just different leaves from my lemon tree. Really nice strong leaves. That'd be really beautiful to use. I do have a story around pine trees. I actually did, when I was starting out, I used to cut from a pine tree, and I didn't realize, oh, they smell so good. I didn't realize that when you cut from a pine tree, they don't actually grow back. They just grow up. But once you cut around, oh, this one's spiky. When you cut around the pine tree, they don't actually grow back. So be careful of that you don't destroy the tree. But pine is really useful. It's great for laurel wreaths and things like that. But it's just great generally for fillers for different arrangements. It's nice just to use. You can just, chop off. You can wire this all the way up if you like, or just use little pieces. So what I mean by little pieces, I was getting my secateurs, is that you can literally just get, and you've got to be careful where you cut it. Okay, so when you're cutting into a piece of greenery, make sure when you cut it, you're not leaving, I'll show you what I mean. I'll just cut it randomly and you can see what I mean. Okay, so see how you've left, oh, you probably can't see it very well with this particular, it's kind of, you've just left a bit of a hole in there, and it's really obvious there's a hole left in there. But if you do it properly, like this one's already been cut, you can't actually really tell where I've cut it. And like this one, you can't quite tell. You might be able to tell a little bit there in the middle, but then what you can do is you can hide that little piece with wiring those two pieces together with a 26 gauge wire. So do you remember the 26 gauge wire is a thinner wire? And I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to do a little tiny hairpin on this one. So getting a 26 gauge wire, I will not need the whole wire. So to save money, I will just bend that wire into a hairpin. Just cut it with my wire secateurs, which I don't really know what they are anymore because I kind of just use all the same these days. And then when you're holding it, I'm right-handed, you hold the greenery in your left hand, okay? When you get your wire, you place it on your stem. So you're holding the wire like this. I've just dropped my little piece of greenery. Okay, you hold your wire like this, like that. So it's a little bit there. Then you bend it down like a little short hairpin. Can you see that? So you got your other little piece just there. Sorry, a bit hard to see. So your little bend. That can come up longer if you want to, but we're going to try. We don't need to manipulate this piece at all to make it go where we want. I'm just giving you a demonstration. Sorry about my disgusting nails. Now you'll see what I mean. Go up a little bit higher. And then all I do is I wrap tightly. 1, 2, 3, and then straight down. So I've got this little piece of neat where it can't come out. Give it a test. You don't want it to come out if it's on somebody. Give it a bit of a pull. and then it's ready to go. So what we do with this is, before we finished it, we'd line all these up with all of our wiring, and then we'd parafilm them all, and then we'd put them together. So you'd never put an arrangement together without parafilm, because parafilm is kind of like the glue, okay? So that's one of those done. I'll do another one just to give you... Okay, so just a little hint, when I've just picked this from a tree, obviously, some of these leaves up the top are quite new leaves. Do not use those new leaves because they will not hold and they'll just go floppy. Okay, so you're better off to use the leaves further down the stem. So this one here, and the way that you get most of these off is just to pull them down. You don't want to cut them if you can help it. You just don't need to, just pull them off. And always look for your perfect leaves. You don't want anything with marks on them or bugs on them. So just these cute little leaves. And these cute little leaves are beautiful for little page boys. They're really just the perfect size for page boys. I think if you know, a little 4-year-old, you don't want a massive leaf like this on a page boy. You can see the difference. I'll show you. So using this is going to be much better than using this, obviously. So use your common sense a little bit. This is a really little leaf. I'm going to use a very similar technique to the ivy leaf that I first showed you. So getting a 26 gauge wire, maybe the other one that you cut, so just a half length, full length gauge wire. You're going to be, it's going to be tricky going backwards here, but you want to go about 2/3 of the way up the leaf, okay? So you see this here, this is your stem. You want at least a little bit of a stem. Longer is better, but that's all that I had to play with. So if you go too low, it won't serve the purpose. So about 2/3. So you're going to go just in there. I just need to take my eyes off the screen for a second to do that, but I'll show you what I mean. So when you're looking at your wire obviously is quite long. This is only a short hairpin, don't forget. And then we bend it down, so carefully bend it down. Always hold where the wire has gone in, and then you fold it down. Straight down like that. So that's what it looks like. Okay, then you pinch that with the stem. Turn it around, hold it. 1, 2, 3, and down. You do not need to add any more than 3. It'll be too chunky. Can you see that? It's nice and neat. You've put a little hole in the leaf itself, but it's barely noticeable because you've used a green wire. So that's called a short hairpin. Now, if it does, you'll find sometimes what will happen is if you don't have a long enough stem just here, you'd need to just chuck it because it won't serve you. It won't be able to do its job. So this is a short hairpin on a perfect leaf. It doesn't always work like that. Let's just do, there goes my parafilm again. I'm doing parafilming techniques the next lesson, so I need to keep it warm. You need to keep it underneath your armpit for 20 minutes, 30 minutes at least. Okay, let's do another leaf. Actually, let's do some berries. I'm not sure what these berries are. I don't even know if they're poisonous or whatever, but they're the things that you need to find out before you do these things. These are really interesting. You know the names of any of these? If you want to comment down below, I'd love to know. I haven't really done any research into them, but I'm not even sure how they'll work that well. Okay, they're good enough that they stay where they're meant to, but they're quite fresh too. So what would happen if they dried out? Would they fall off? So you need to make sure of those things. I wouldn't use them for wedding work or anything like that. I only use flowers and leaves that I can be 100% sure that I've worked with before, or I've done my own tests with them. I'd never use anything in wedding work that I didn't know didn't work. Never had an unhappy bride, so that's a good thing in 20 years. Okay, so I might use some berries. Now, a 26 gauge, I'll just show you what happens if you use a wire that's too soft for, not soft, but not thick enough. Okay, so again, I'm going to cut these, but I don't have to. I could keep it long. So if I use the same technique, I'll show you what will happen. So I'm just going to, rather than use, I'm just going to push that through one of the stems. Doesn't matter where you really put, as long as it's got a bit of support there. And do the same technique as what I did before. 1, 2, 3, straight down. So you can see that there just isn't enough strength in this wire to hold it up. The whole purpose of wiring is to hold it up, so that's okay. But generally, you that might be okay in a bouquet, like not in a bouquet, in a buttonhole. If you had something that weird in a buttonhole, generally you might have 3 of them or 2 of them or something. But just say you had something like a wrist corsage and you did have that in there, and she wanted more natural flowers. That might work. But when you start getting the length starts increasing, what happens is it just flops. So you're using the wrong wire. And that's a learned mistake. Like, you have to make, there goes my parafilm again. Don't ever try and heat your parafilm up unnaturally, like in the microwave or in the oven. It doesn't work. It doesn't like heat. It likes warmth, different kind of heat. Okay, so I'm just going to get one of my 22 gauge strength wires. Going to put it through, same sort of technique as before. Push it down. You've got your short hairpin, and that sort of forms your stem as well. 1, 2, 3. This is almost a bit too tough. So if I had an in-between strength, like a 20 gauge or something like that, that might be quite useful. But you can see the difference. It doesn't bend. It's doing what it's meant to. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind. If it starts flopping around, have a look at where you're using it or what you're using it for. It may work if you're using a 26 gauge like the one that I showed you before. But ideally, you want something that's going to stand up. See, that there just goes one of the little the things bopped off, you know. So you've got to be careful. A different wiring technique is a long hairpin, which is just a hairpin. Just call it a hairpin, and you use a full-length long wire for this one because it is a longer kind of leaf. So these leaves are beautiful. That you use them in arrangements and wedding work easily. They're quite pretty. These are homegrown. They grow really easily. My son, when he was a landscape gardener, got me a little plant, and it's just a beautiful big plant now. So this one has quite a long vein. So what you do with this one is you'd pop it through, probably not too far up. You don't need to manipulate too far up, but probably about there, probably about halfway, roughly. And remember, you don't want this to go all the way. You just want it to be stem length. So as you go through, you'll work out where that is. And sometimes it's not ideal. It's not going to be perfect every single time. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm keeping this stem long just to show you that if this were going in an arrangement, so this would go into, say, oasis, say for instance, or a hand bouquet, so just a bouquet, I would keep the stem on because it's a natural stem bouquet, and then you just parafilm pretty much there. And if you didn't want to go all the way down to there, which you could, but if you want to save money, you just parafilm here and parafilm here so that you don't spike yourself, okay? You don't want to spike anyone. And just think with wedding dresses and things like that, you have to make sure that there's nothing spiky hanging out, because otherwise you can damage dresses and be up for a lot of money. So this is quite good in that if you want to manipulate the stem a little bit, you can. that gives you some flexibility around those things, which is quite nice. Just remember that if you play with it too much, it may break, so just be mindful of that. But that's a really nice technique, and you can, if you want more strength, you don't really need it with this stem, but if you want more strength, or you were cutting the stem off, which we will just for the sake of what I'm trying to explain to you, you could keep this at a longer hairpin, okay? So you could make it almost all the way down, okay? And that way it's pretty strong anyway. So just do some practice demos on different leaves that you've got around your home, different short hairpins or longer, slightly longer hairpins. This isn't a full length hairpin. Let me show you a full length hairpin so you get a bit of an idea. Okay, this is another leaf. Okay, another nice plant that I've got out the back. It's a lovely. It's not an old, like it's a fairly new leaf. You know, it might be sort of 3 weeks old, this leaf. So I would make sure I use a 22 again. 22 might be slightly too strong for this, but if I use a shorter hairpin, it might be all right. So again, I'm going into the back of the flower about 1/3 of the way up. About 1/3, just over 1/3. It's sort of hard to get the right measurement sometimes. And I'm going to be going I want to go just enough down to that stem. Okay, so it needs to meet the bottom. So maybe there, pull it down. Okay, so it's a little bit longer than what I wanted, but that's okay. And then when I twist it, I'm going to keep to this part up here as close as I can. So 1, 2, 3, no more than 3. Is that okay? Yes, it's not bending. So that's quite good. So this is a really good strength for this one. Okay, if I had a bigger leaf, I might do a longer hairpin. So this prong would meet this prong all the way down. Okay, so it might just sort of come up to here. Okay, so again, if I'm parafilming, I would just parafilm from here at the end of the leaf all the way down to the stem, and I'd make sure that little prong, that sharp little prong there, is covered on my leaf, and that'll secure that leaf quite nicely. And you can still do things with that leaf, you know, you can alter it, but it's not too obvious, and because the flowers quite often will cover this piece here, you won't even see that hole. Alright, I might leave it there, but I'm happy to do more. Just have a play, they're quite fun. When you get some leaves, have a bit of a play. You can often, so this is another leaf from my lemon tree. I'll just show you quickly. These are not ideal leaves. See how they've got little spots on them? Don't use them, but for practice they're fine. Again, I'd use a 26 gauge. I'd just chop it in half roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Just going to thread them through, and I'll show you what I mean by, just get another leaf. And you have to be quite quick with these, because you remember, like when you're doing wedding work, you'll be there all day if you take too long. So there's 2 little leaves that I've just quickly wired up. And what you might do with these, for a buttonhole especially, is you might just taper them down like this, and then you'd parafilm, these 2 pieces together. Keep in mind that they will be parafilmed to start off with, so they hold together. They stick together when they're parafilmed because of the heat. So when you're transferring heat through your fingers, the parafilm will grip to them and they will stay there. And then you just, like you'd parafilm, like you might have, I don't know, 5 buttonholes to do for the men, for the groomsmen. Then you might have the father of the bride, you might have 2 page boys, and you might have the MC. I don't know, you might have 10 buttonholes to do. So that's just a nice quick way of preparing your leaves ready. You might do something like that. Or they might just want something simple where they just have 1 leaf, which is fine as well. Camellia leaves are the best leaves to use. They are beautiful and shiny and they hold really well. But again, just have a play around to see what you've got. All right, I'll leave it there.